If you click this video, it's clear to assume that you want to make your life better or you want to just live a better life altogether. The life you're living right now is either making you feel incomplete or you're feeling kind of stressed out, you might be in debt, or generally you're just like, you know what, my life is pretty good, but it could be better because there's always room for improvement. I have something that could help out anyone in any situation, because who ultimately doesn't want to live a better, more comfortable life? Here are the top 3 books that I recommend but I'm going to go in the order of the books that I recommend from first, second, and third. Everyone that's watching this video, read right after, or start reading one of these books like right after you watch this video. You should probably start reading these books, whether it's on Audible or you buy the book on Amazon and you start reading it as an ebook or something. I'd highly recommend reading one of these books instead of watching a bunch of videos like this, because you'll get a false sense of gratification watching all these motivational videos rather than actually taking the steps that it takes to make your life better. So if you're one of those people that is disciplined and highly driven, I cannot stress this enough. You should read all 3 of these books. So the first book that I recommend here is Atomic Habits by James Clear, okay? I recommend this book because it literally opens your eyes to a whole different way of thinking when it comes to how you live your life and the things that you do in a day-to-day basis, whether it be get ready to go to work, your morning routine, what you do when you get home from work, any sort of routine, any routine that you have now that you may or may not be aware of, and the habits, both good and bad, that you have that you may not even be aware of. I think I said that already. For me personally, I was in a place where I wanted to make my life better, and I wanted to, I've always heard this book recommended to people on YouTube, so I was like, let me just start here because, this book, I've always heard it recommended. This is probably, I know I'm not the first person that's told you about this book. You've definitely heard about Atomic Habits somewhere else. Our lifestyles are ultimately determined by the habits we have, both good and bad. Some, like I mentioned before, we're not aware of that we do. And you may not notice that every time you cook, you don't wash the dishes after, or that every time you take a shower, you don't take your laundry out and put it in the dirty clothes bin, rather you just leave it on the floor. So there's certain things that you do, both good and bad, that you can actually, that if you can kind of take notice of these things and identify them, you could greatly, basically completely alter the course of your life. And if we have more bad habits than good habits, that basically outweighs the balance of the destiny scale to be against our favor. And realistically, nobody wants to have to go through that. Who wants to live? Life's already hard. You don't want to live life any harder by doing little stupid stuff that you could fix. Most people don't tend to recognize the bad habits that they have until they've taken notice of it. And this book goes through a couple different ways that you can identify the types of habits that you have, both good and bad. The method that stuck the most to me is the one that I'm going to go over in this video. So this is the one that I recommend that people take the steps on now if you don't want to read the book and you just want a quick, summary of the 3. This is the key method that stuck to me when it came to identifying bad habits. And that's literally trying your best to write down everything that you do. It's a bonus if you can write down everything you eat, because if you do that, you can also identify the bad food that you eat or your eating habits and stuff like that. And that kind of helps with if you're going to the gym and if you're trying to maintain weight, or if you're trying to bulk up or even lose weight, you kind of have a sort of track list of all the things you eat. But going back to your habits, even though it might be hard for some people because you might not know what it is that you should write down or what it is that you should be looking for, but it should be anything that is routine to you. So for example, if you wake up in the morning, right, and the first thing that you do is go downstairs and brush your teeth, that would be kind of like a habit block that you can kind of you could start writing down and taking note of. So anything that you typically do, I wake up in the morning, I brush my teeth, take a shower, I'll cook breakfast, make coffee, get ready for work. If I have to go to work in the morning, go to work, come home, I go to the gym. And then if I don't go to the gym, if I have a project or classes that I have to do, I'll do that first. And then if I have time after I'm done with that, I'll go to the gym afterwards. Some days, however, I do go to the gym first and do other projects like video editing and video recording afterwards, but it really all depends on what it is I have to do and how I scheduled that. I was able to break down what it is that I do, and I could then implement different habits, good habits that I want to do into my schedule. And my schedule wasn't always like that. I kind of constructed it to be like that in a way. And it all started with me writing down what it was that I did when I woke up in the morning. So I go to work in the morning. So I noticed that, I brush my teeth in the morning. Sometimes I would cook breakfast, sometimes I don't. But now I try to make cooking breakfast or eating some sort of breakfast part of my routine, because breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And who wants to work 8+ hours on an empty stomach, or go the first 2 or 3 hours of the day with nothing in your stomach? That would suck. This also helps you identify bad habits in your life. Back to me personally, because I can't really think of any good examples other than how it worked for me. So I guess that's the best example that I could use, is how it worked for me, so you could see that it'll work for you as well. So for me, one of the bad habits that I would do is sometimes when I would get home from work, I would change, take a shower, but then go straight to sleep after, because some days I'd be really tired. And this was like a trend for like 3 days straight. I remember it, and I was like, dude, this is a problem. And this was a little bit after kind of I read this book. So then I was thinking, I'm like, okay, I need to write down everything that I do and understand what it is that makes me want to go to sleep after I get home from work. And I realized that thing for me was that I'd never really planned out what it was that I was going to do after I took a shower. From there, I was like, okay, so tomorrow I'm going to wake up, I'm going to write down from the beginning of the day everything that I'm going to do, and I'm just going to add new things. And one of the things that I read from the book is that there's like little mini parts in the main things that you do that you can slip in, like that you can kind of slip in as a path to do the next new habit that you want to do. So for me, for example, I wanted to go to the gym every day after work. So what I would do is what I read in the book. I would come home, and as soon as I would take off my boots, I would go upstairs, grab my stuff for the gym, go back downstairs, depending if I was really sweaty that day, because sometimes work gets really hot. I'd take a shower, then go to the gym, and then come home, take my dogs out, and then get ready for editing, go over, write down any ideas, and then after that, I'd read a chapter in my book, and then I would go downstairs. If I had to cook, I would cook, and then make sure my coffee was on auto brew for the next morning, so I didn't have to make my coffee. And then when it came to writing down what it is that I did the night before, if I knew it was something I was going to do, like I know I always wake up in the morning and brush my teeth and take a shower, I kind of already wrote that down the night before, because I already knew I was going to do that stuff. And then in the middle of that, I also added doing a face care and a beard care routine, because that's very important to do that. And so I was able to squeeze that in between me brushing my teeth, taking a shower, and cooking breakfast. Also taking vitamins. I did buy vitamins to help with the sleeping problem, and that helped tremendously. So, just a reminder, if you need to, definitely start taking your vitamins. Very important. I remember being a kid and I was like, taking my vitamins. I'm not doing that. Now that I'm old, I'm like, oh yeah, definitely got to re-up on the vitamin game. I definitely recommend writing down what it is that you do and almost scheduling your day out. And it starts if you already know what it is that you like to do. And then anything that it is that you didn't think of or that you didn't notice yet, just try to actively write it down as you're doing it. So like if you notice that when you cook, you don't immediately wash the dishes, take note of that. You'd be like, okay, when I cook, I go do this. I might go sit down and watch TV, or I'll go watch YouTube. Be like, no, I'll note that and realize that I don't wash the dishes, and then try to squeeze in adding washing the dishes after you cook into doing that. Or doing the thing like with the gym, like whether you get home from work or you get home from school, changing into your gym clothes, that helps. Or having your gym stuff ready the night before, so that way you can see it and you'll be more likely to do it. That was another thing that he also mentioned in the book, was that if you leave things out, like for example, if you want to read more books or if you want to journal more, if you actually leave it out, like the book or the notebook out on your dresser or on a nightstand where you're actually going to see it, rather than leaving it in your backpack or in your bookcase or a dresser, you're never going to read it because you're never going to see it. So if you can't think to see it, if you're not going to see it, you're not going to think of it. And if you're not going to think of it, you're never going to do it. So it all ties into one big thing. So if you leave the book open on a table or your notebook open with the pen right there, you'll be more inclined to actually want to read it or journal. And that helps with whatever it is you want to do, even when it comes down to eating healthier. Say, for example, when you put your fruit in the bottom shelf of your fridge, and then when you open the fridge, you can't see it because it's at the bottom, and you'll see all the other sugary, no good things that you shouldn't eat, depending on what it is that you have in your fridge. I don't know, because everybody buys different groceries. Instead of doing that, what you could do is you could put the fruit in a bowl and put it on the top shelf. That way, when you do open the fridge to get a snack, you can see the fruit right there, and you might be more inclined to grab it. Or better yet, if you don't have fruit flies or some sort of rodent infestation, you can leave your fruit in a basket or in a bowl and put it on your kitchen table. That way you can also see it then when you want something and just grab it right then and there, and it's more easily accessible. That way it promotes you performing that habit of eating healthier more, which is really good. So you can implement the strategy of leaving things out or adding things into little habits that you already do, and that would basically boost your performance and boost your sense of self-worth overall, which is very important, which is another reason why you're watching this video. So, and ultimately it's harder to stay consistent on habits in your life if things aren't being written or taken account of. So it's honestly nice to collect data on yourself, because all these other companies are collecting data on you, so why not collect data on yourself and kind of finding out little bits of new information that you may have never realized about yourself, and ultimately changing those things if you dislike it, or leaving it alone, or maybe improving upon it if you do like it, because like I mentioned before, there's always room for improvement. And by introducing new habits with pre-existing good habits, it's very important because it's a strategy that allows you to weave together habits almost seamlessly, and it'll be like you always did it. So that's very, very, very important, and a really good strategy to implement if you haven't been already. You can also reward yourself after doing good habits too. Like sometimes I might go and get a coffee from Starbucks after going to the gym, since the coffee shop is right nearby. So you could do little small things like that. It doesn't have to be just for the gym, but that's like the best example that I can think of now, because that's one way that I reward myself by going to the gym, is by trying to get a coffee. Not all the time, but sometimes. And although it may not seem like it, all these small changes that you add and edit throughout your life, they do add up, and it all creates something to a bigger picture. It may not look like it at first. You may lose motivation. You may fall off for a couple days, which is fine. Not everybody's perfect, but what matters is that you get right back up to perform and do it again as if you never stopped, or that if you never got discouraged. As long as you can stay disciplined and constantly move and perform almost effortlessly, you should be fine. And remember that life consists of a process of events, both good and bad. It's not just one event that happens. Like a lot of people see lottery winners and they just see the guy winning the money or the person winning the money. They don't see all the money that they spent to get that winning lottery ticket. So you have to remember that life is not just some big event, or anything is not just a big event. It's a process of changes that took place to get to that specific event. The second book I recommend is The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. He's a real estate mogul. He's pretty popular now on YouTube. He's got a lot of shorts and stuff coming up, which is pretty crazy, because now that I read his book, I'm seeing more and more. So either my phone's listening to me and giving me things that it may realize that I'm interested in. All right, we're gonna act like the background didn't just change, and we're just gonna roll with it. All right, basically just put in extra effort, multiply everything by 10, and you'll get the results that you want. But I pretty much summed up everything I had to say about the 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. Now, the third book that I recommend everybody read, which is probably my personal favorite on this list. So I'm a really big history person. Like, I love history books. History was like my favorite subject in school. And I remember hearing about this book in a YouTube video. Like, I did most of these books other than the 10X Rule. Since I was like in my phase of listening to a bunch of audiobooks, I was like, let me listen to this. When I learned that it is basically just one big like history book kind of, but it was teaching the timeless, like, this is how you know this stuff works, because it literally survived over 4,000 years. This book dates all the way back to some parables that were connected to the Babylonian Empire. And if anybody knows what the Babylonian Empire or anything about like the Akkadians or the Middle East, you probably already caught a little bit of interest into it already just by hearing that name. If Gilgamesh sounds familiar, whether you watch Fate or you read like some books or something and you heard of that name, yeah, you definitely know what I'm talking about. Like I said, these principles survived the test of time, so that's how you know this stuff works. Now, I could be a good guy and tell you the principles that were discussed in the book, but I'm not going to do that, because then if I did, I'd be robbing you of a really good read, and that's not what my mission is. My mission is to get you to read, okay? There's only so much information you can learn from watching videos. When a lot of people talk about book recommendations and they're like, it's kind of hard to tell people what the book is about, it's because it's true. I don't know, personally, when I read a book, I get so enveloped in the information that I'm learning that it processes in a different way that I can understand it and retain it in my brain. And it only really is easy to explain when I write it down beforehand before I explain it. There are going to be some parts that stuck with me that I can explain right away when people ask me. However, when it comes to like the deeper principles and the deeper meanings or a deeper perspective on a book, it takes me a while, because I have to kind of write it down and really start thinking about that book and weighing out what it is that I really learned when I read it. Be nice. I'll go over 3 principles that were discussed in this book that stuck to me that I thought were very important. The first one being that you need to love to work. That's the kind of attitude that you have to have. It's kind of discussed in the 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. However, in here it goes a little bit deeper, in the meaning that if you're the type of person that wakes up every day and you kind of dread going to work, when you're done with work, you're kind of like done for the day, then you're not according to the standards of the books, then that's the mindset that's not going to get you very far in life. You need to be able to love work. You don't have to like what you do. That's not what it's saying. You need to get enchanted with the idea of working hard. With that sort of mindset, then you'll be able to just go out and do anything, no matter how menial or how monotonous it is. You'll just have that mindset and the discipline of just doing it. The second thing is to save a tenth. It could be more, but the idea to save money. Anything that is income, you need to save a portion of it that you just don't touch and you invest, which is true. That way you always have a full purse. That's what was the words that were used in the book. Like, some of the language in it is kind of old, so it's interesting hearing it in an audiobook. However, that's what they say. If you take a portion of what you earn and you put it somewhere and invest it or save it, you'll never be broke in that sort of sense. The next things are to own your home and to own your access to food. Then that way you'll always have self-sufficiency, and that's important when it comes to having wealth. And it's not that bad. However, it is important to own your own home. That way you always have the comfort of knowing you own your home. If you forget the idea that Uncle Sam will take it back if you don't pay the taxes, you kind of own your home. Then if you own your own access to food, then you don't have to worry about if anything were to happen. You won't have no food. No, that won't happen to you because you own your own access to food. So that's what it's also discussed in the book. And those are 3 things that really stuck to me. Now, all these books that I mentioned are available for purchase on Audible or Amazon. So you can read the ebook, purchase the physical book, or listen to the audiobook and find ways to implement listening to the audiobook in your daily life. That way you can learn something. The idea is don't starve yourself of any knowledge that you need to learn to live a better life. And if you liked the video, leave a like. If you disliked it, drop dislike. If you read one of these books before, let me know in the comments if you would recommend this book to other people. As always, I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.